Hi guys, thank you so much for still being here. Thank you to my over 250 subscribers. I am trying to get to 300. Yesterday I checked, we are at like 290 or something like that. Do subscribe if there's anything that you find to be entertaining or beneficial to you, because it will help us out, you and I, in creating a community of thinkers here. So again, thank you very much for the support thus far. On this video, I'm going to be talking a lot of stereotypes, obviously, because if you have such a topic of like a group of people, a whole group of people, stereotypes are bound to be thrown around. So there is no homogeneous group of people that all thinks the same, acts the same, talks the same. Obviously not, right? So on this video, when I say Africans and I say white folks, just take it from a stereotypical point of view, because obviously in every group of people there will be exceptions, but we all know exceptions do not make or create the general perception, the general rule. So again, there will be stereotypes, but I am talking from my experience, generally what I have seen with my own eyes. So now that we have that sort of like a disclaimer out of the way, let's just get right into it. So, I am a Kenyan woman, born and raised, and I worked in Kenya before I moved to Europe, more specifically Austria, where I currently live. I have therefore worked in both countries, and that means I have worked with African people, Kenyans, and I have worked with white folks, more specifically Austrians, but I've also worked with other races that live in Austria and other white folks from other countries. So I can now talk as somebody who's worked with both groups of people, and the following are my findings. This is what I have witnessed time and time again. While I was working in Kenya, I noticed that we Africans struggle with timekeeping. When it comes to time, white folks, Europeans out here, Austrians where I live, and by extension Germans who I have worked with as well, because it's just the next door country and some of them obviously come to Austria to look for work. They are obsessively on time. They obsess over timekeeping. They are very, very committed to making it on time. And when you work with Africans, more specifically in my country, Kenya, because I can only talk about the people I worked with, and again, these are stereotypes. Of course, there will be exceptions, but you will notice that we struggle with timekeeping. I don't remember the last time, like, let me just use my last job as an example. I cannot remember when we set a meeting for like 2 in the afternoon and everybody was there at 2. Some people will be there at 2, but then we always know that the meeting will start around 2:30, or worst case scenario 3. I specifically remember a manager who would set a meeting 1 hour earlier just so they can start it on time. Like, they knew they wanted this meeting to happen at 3, so they asked everybody to come at 2. Like, it is that bad. I don't know what it is about us Africans and timekeeping. We are never in a hurry. But then again, if you think about it, if you just try to come up with a theory, maybe it's the fact that we have great weather and we live in countries that are very, like, physically speaking, geographically speaking, very beautiful, with like the jungle, the oceans. Kenya, for instance, borders the Indian Ocean. So people have that Hakuna Matata mentality, like dragging your feet because the weather is always great, tropical weather, and also that like makes people's mood, even though financially speaking, we might not be, you know, on the same level as the West, but like when it comes to our mood, we are always like la 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 la, chakara chara cha. People are laughing, saying hi to one another. What's that I just did? La 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 la, chakara chara cha. But you get the idea, right? Like, we just have that laid back mentality where no one is in a hurry. Like, especially in Kenya, there's a town. I'm from the big city, Nairobi, and that's the mainland. But then we have an island where the ocean, the Indian Ocean borders. and there's a town called Mombasa, and we are always talking about the people from down coast because that's our coastline, and we are always like, they drag their feet a little too much. Like, even fellow Kenyans are complaining about the islanders. We're always like, like imitating how they talk, and we're like, unaraka wenda kuzima moto wewe, mwendo aste aste, pole pole, usini stressi. Like, that's basically how they talk. They have an accent and they don't like to be stressed. So the thing about timekeeping, I have to say that even though it's a stereotype, obviously there will be Africans who are dangerously on time. They are always on time. They come even earlier, obviously. But like generally, I have witnessed it that white folks are very good at timekeeping, and I've actually learned a lot from them, because with white folks, especially in a country such as Austria, you come 5 minutes late, the meeting is cancelled. 5 minutes, it's like, dude. And they're like, you didn't call ahead. You didn't let us know. You think we were waiting for you for 5 minutes? Reschedule. You just have to get a new appointment. Like, it is that bad. I used to work at a place where we would book appointments for clients. And the moment the client was like 3 minutes away, they would call panicking like, please tell them I will be around 3 minutes late. What? And I used to wonder, what? In Kenya, you call when you're already 30 minutes late. I mean, sorry, I'm stuck in traffic, but I'm still coming. It's still on. They're going to be there at 4:30 for a 2 o'clock meeting. And it's like, well, everyone is shrugging. It is unbelievable how dangerously on time white folks, Europeans, are out here. So that's something that I've noticed as a difference. On to the next difference. When you work with black people, Africans, let me use the word Africans because that's who I can relate with the most. Black is, on a broader scale. There are black people all over the world. But when you work with specifically Africans, Kenyans, they are more personable. They are more emotionally available, if you can put it that way. And I guess that's where the stereotype of European coldness comes from, because when you work with white folks out here, that closeness is not there. It's robotic. It is more like, again, there are exceptions. I have made some friends at workplaces, even here in Austria, but it's not the norm. Like, those are the exceptions. Those are the people who are probably raised differently. But when you work in Europe, you will feel the coldness. You will feel they put the person second, right? So it's like the job is in front of the human, because the human is always replaceable. And like in Kenya, it's the other way around. The human is first, the job, we can always replace it, right? That's the difference. Like in Kenya, it was not strange for a colleague to be like babysitting for her colleague, and it happens quite fast. Like, you guys just started working together 6 months ago, and someone is calling you up like, bring me some lunch. I'm not bringing you lunch. I have to go and stop and queue up. I'm not bringing you lunch. Please bring me some lunch. I'll babysit for you. Listen, I'll babysit for you on Saturday. Okay, fine, I'll bring you lunch. Like, such conversations are very common in the workplace in Kenya. Like, what are you doing this Sunday? Come, my aunt is getting married. Like, people hanging out together a lot, even though they're supposed to just be colleagues, is not frowned upon in Kenya. It is the norm. It is the opposite is actually what is frowned upon. Like, how can you work with someone you don't know much about them? Like, again, there are exceptions, because I can already hear some people, going like, oh, but I do that, and I'm European. Yes, you're the exception. I'm talking about the general work culture. In Europe, I seldom hung out with anyone who I ever worked with at any place. Like, it's only the exceptions, and they are mostly foreigners like me. Europeans, and it's not even a thing of like, you might watch this and be like, oh, it's just racism, oh, it's just xenophobia. Not really. Even to one another, you will notice they are not that close to one another. You will notice that they have a coldness even to one another. So it's not necessarily racism, because you might be thinking, those guys are just, racist. No, they have that cold nature when it comes. And again, this could go back to their weather, because think about it. When the first Homo sapiens made their way into the European continent through the Eurasia route, they found ice. These people had to find a way to survive, and they have to find a way to make themselves warm. So they go inside, right? They lock themselves inside their houses. They started with caves, but these are now the modern caves, the houses. And you notice how Europeans like to be left alone and to just be on their own. And we are more extroverted going outside to be with others, because the houses are too hot to be inside. Our temperature, if you think about it, there are reasons of how we evolved differently. These people would rather be inside a place where they can warm themselves and their families, right? And you would rather be outside socializing with people because it's hot, it's tropical weather, beautiful weather on the African continent, and it's too hot inside. So it also builds. You even notice how they change their attitude or their mood when it's summer. You notice them being a little bit more outgoing. You notice them smiling a little bit more. So can you imagine if they had summer all year round like us? They would probably just act like us, because at the end of the day, they're just people, they're just human beings. And can you imagine if you see them get a little bit more gloomy in winter? Can you imagine if we had winter all year round? We would probably act exactly the way they're acting, like, I need my space. Also, you need to think about the history of Europe and how they had so many diseases here, not even that long ago, how they always had outbreaks, how they always had plagues. I think they learned to stay away from one another so they don't get sick, and just be hands off. And you notice it at the workplace. They're very hands off when it comes to your emotions. Now, obviously, this has its disadvantages. This is why statistics show them as more depressed than us, even though they have more money. A lot of them are just struggling with emotional stuff. They might not be struggling financially, but you notice it that that air is there. And then you go to a country like Kenya, where a lot of people are broke, but the happy-go-lucky attitude of Kenya, every time I visit home, my moods are lifted up. It happens as soon as you get off the plane, because it's I'm happy. I don't have to have money to be happy. And there's a lot of happiness. Why is there less depression, even though the people there are broke? In the workplaces, well, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are not really relying on money to be happy. And you will notice it once you work in both worlds, in the world of Africans and in the world of Europeans. And I am talking specifically about Kenya and Austria, right? I noticed these things. I noticed these differences. Now, one of the disadvantages, because there is also a disadvantage on our part of that, is that Africans, we struggle with respecting one another's privacy. When you work with black people, girl, they are all up in your business. Let me tell you something I learned from white folks. I actually learned this. I can credit white people for this. In the office, I learned to ask, when you go into somebody's office, I always used to knock, obviously. That is just courtesy, common good manners, which you learn when you're a child. But there's something else I learned from them. I learned to knock, wait to be told to go in, and then I learned from white folks to ask, let's say their name is Mary. Mary, do you have a minute? Because in Kenya, we seldom did that at the office. You knocked, you didn't even ask to be told to come in. You walked in and said, so, about this client, I think they paid. You notice that in African offices, Kenya, the places of work, people don't ask you if you have a minute. Do you have a minute? They don't ask. They get right into business. They are leaning in front of you. They are on your computer. They are almost like nose to nose. That's us for you. So there's that disadvantage of us not knowing where the boundary is. And you notice in a lot of offices, the greeting in the morning is a hug. People just hug around the office. People hug one another a lot in Kenya. It's morning, hey, mambo. People are always hugging one another in Kenya. And then out here, we don't even do a handshake in the morning. Okay, it's like, hi Morgan, this is German for morning, and that's it. People do not have that closeness. So I guess that's, excuse me, a disadvantage on our part, because it's like, girl, you don't even know if I have time. Maybe I'm in the middle of something. So that I learned from white folks. I learned to ask them, do you have a minute? Can you imagine a grown-ass woman who came here in almost her 30s, and I didn't know that at work you have to ask somebody if they have a minute before you start talking. It is that bad. Like, the culture had trained me to just go up to people and start talking, because that's what we do in Kenya. And so if you're watching this and you're from, maybe, again, there are exceptions, but if you're watching this and you're from that kind of a background where you just go in and you just start talking, unajua ule client bado hajatuma check, ebu nikuulize, ebu fungua hiyo Excel nikuonyeshe penye nilikuwa nakwambia, ebu kwanza fungua, like, you don't even ask the person, do you have a minute? You just start showing them things on Excel, and you're like, umeona email yangu? Email Francis ni nini? And somebody's in the middle of something. Like, that barrier, that professional barrier, we struggle with that. But with white folks, you have to ask if they have time for you. So we struggle with that, giving one another with boundaries, because again, we can be very warm and embracing of one another, which is a good thing if you ask me. That's why we don't struggle with depression. But at the same time, we can feel like, hey dude, I need my privacy. So there's advantages and disadvantages on both ends. Again, on this video, take what you need, leave what you don't need. These are only my observations. And I also have to say, let me give you real examples, right? Real life examples. I guess it makes it easier to just, like, have that view, concoct that vision in your mind. Let me give you an example. I told somebody at work something personal here in the West, and if it had been in Kenya, they would have wanted to help, because it was something that was affecting me, and it was making me not perform very well at work, because I was emotionally, in that sphere. So I told this person, and they had such a cold response to me, and they even tried to, like, spin it like it's just a question of professionality. Like, they were just telling me they were not listening in a how do I put this in words? Pretending that I had crossed the professional line, even though I know where that line is, and I know that when it's quiet at work, people can't small talk. She even used to small talk. But once a European, like, this is a German speaking person, if you know anything about this region, then you know their history, and you know even their language, you know how it is and how it sounds, and there's always that distance. And I don't say that out of disrespect, because I am married to a German speaking man. He's an Austrian. But anyways, without getting too much, out of topic, they were quite cold in their response, and they were trying to spin it as it being a question of professionality. In the meantime, chick, you're going home to swallow antidepressants. Maybe it's about time you started talking to people instead of, like, bottling up everything, because I knew she was on antidepressants, and you could tell the days where she forgot to take her medicine. I knew this as a fact. I'm not only, trying to be shady here. I knew it as a fact that she was on antidepressants. So anyways, I just let it go, because it's white folks for you, right? It's like that coldness is, I don't know, in a way embedded in their DNA. And I guess that preemptive, again, it might go back to how we evolved. Look at the continent and look at where we come from. Like, that must have played a huge role in how we respond to things. So this preempts my next point, which is the question of empathy. And this is controversial, I have been on internet discussions and forums, whether it be here on YouTube, the YouTube comment sections of maybe of such videos that talk about such topics, or Reddit, or on Instagram, Twitter, or now it's called X. I'm not on X, but I used to be on Twitter. And I have seen the discussion of white folks struggling with empathy, and people have normally looked to their history to, like, justify that point that they do struggle with empathy. People have talked about how could they just commit genocide all over the world in the name of civilizing the people. There's something there. I don't know whether you're spiritual and you will say in their spirit, or you will say maybe you're more scientifically inclined and you will say in their genes. I don't know how you would, you decide. I don't know. But I have seen this discussion where it's like, that's why generally people say the African warmth, like Africans being very close to another human being and feeling the pain of that human being faster than a white person ever could. And once you work with them, I hate to reenact a stereotype, but once you work with them, you will sit back and be like, hang on. So about that issue of empathy, you will watch them be less empathetic than we, the African people, especially when it comes to somebody who does not look like them. Especially if you're black or brown, you will see the person struggling to empathize. There is that. And one Belgium, there's a woman, she's black like me, she's from Kenya like myself, she lives in Belgium. One time she asked me, and I'm not laughing about I'm just laughing, the way she asked it sounded hilarious, but what she asked is obviously a serious thing. She asked, why do these people suffer from a lot of mental illnesses, and why are they like on the news for doing very extreme things that you never watch on the news in Kenya? In Kenya, if you watch something on the news when it comes to crime, it's normally somebody stealing, somebody a robbery gone wrong, and then somebody shot the other one. It's like such kind of violence. But here it's like more of the things you watch in movies, the more of like the psychopathic violence where a dad locked up his kids in the basement, or they did something where or like somebody started a cult where they were SAing women. That's word that you cannot use on YouTube, sexual A of women, and such psychopathic stories. And she was like, why do they suffer from so much mental illness? And then another friend of mine told me it's because they solved the financial problem. So like with us, our crimes are mostly us trying to eat. So the crimes are more like stealing, killing, where somebody would not let you rob them, and they fought back, and such crimes of like needing to eat because we've not solved the financial issue. The socio-economic issues are not solved. And then out here, a lot of them have solved that, like their jobs, like they're doing well financially, but now they're bored. Somebody said like now the crimes are more crimes that are psychopathic, because now it's just an idle mind being the devil's workshop, right? People just now coming up with very psychopathic ideas. So I guess that's the difference in how they commit their crimes versus how we commit our crimes. And granted, both sides have criminals, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying only black people steal or only white people do such psychopathic things like, SA and locking people up in basements, stalking and such things. Obviously, in both worlds, there will be, people who also do that. But all I'm saying is that question of like them having, like the Belgian girl said, I'm noticing so much mental illness out here. It would be maybe because, again, of that deep isolation, like they always isolate themselves, which brings about depression. I don't have a degree in psychology, so I don't claim to have one, so I wouldn't be in a position to tell you exactly what. But on that point of empathy, I don't need a degree in psychology to actually trust my own eyes, right? I don't need science to explain that to me, because it's something that I can see with my own eyes. Africans tend to be warmer. They tend to have, in Swahili we call it huruma. That empathy, you tend to see it more at the workplace when you work with Africans as compared to Europeans. I see them struggling with empathy. You will see that as long as something bad did not happen to them specifically, or their children specifically, they don't care. Like, you will see it. This person does not care. In 2023, I lost a close family member of mine, And again, there are exceptions. There are people who I worked with who actually cared. So I'm not saying like it's all of them. There's no homogeneous group of people that acts the same. But a majority of them had no connection to that. Like somebody actually asked me, so you're going to fly back? And especially they struggle with empathy, especially when it is not someone who looks like them. So somebody actually asked me, so you're going to fly home to Kenya just for like the burial? Can you not like call? And I was like, wow. This is somebody close to me. Of course, I have to go and bury them. And they were actually asking me that. Like, no, I'm just thinking Kenya is like 10 hours away by plane. You have to stop in Dubai or whatever place that, you know, sometimes I need to transit from. And then you have to spend so much money. And that's the way they think. Like I could actually not blame this woman because she actually thinks that way, right? Again, they put the job, the money first before the people. You know, they're very practical, logical. I'm not thinking emotionally like a robot, right? And it's maybe the culture has trained them that way, but I couldn't believe my eyes and my ears when it comes to something such as death, you know? And so when this person at work in 2023 was asking me, do I really need to fly home, blah, 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 I could actually understand that I know where you're coming from because I've had this before in my husband's family. You guys do act very differently when it comes to things such as mourning. In Kenya, we have something called matanga. It is a whole week, you all, a whole week of grief and mourning and people coming together to be there for one another. In my family, in my husband's family, I mean, when a tragedy hit, I was surprised because I was waking up at 6 in the morning to cook for the guests that will come so we can kuomboleza. We call it in Kenya kuomboleza, matanga, tuomboleze, tuwe pamoja wote, sisi sote tuje pamoja, tuwe sote pamoja. And I was so surprised that nobody came. They were just communicating on phone. And then we had a church memorial, but that was pretty much it. Like, that was it. Like, we have the church memorial. People give their sorry. They, you know, do the handshake finally because they're not very big on hugging anyways. Again, there's exceptions. So finally, like, there was the handshake and people have to go back to their businesses. And then we had like the lunch and that was it. And I was so confused as an African. But I respect people's cultures, right? I'm not going to impose. But you will notice that actually that stereotype, a lot of it is true, that compared to Africans, white folks do tend to struggle with empathy, and you will see it even at the workplace. At the workplace, let me actually put it into, I think, the best way to explain it that can give you a more complete picture. At the workplace, in a Kenyan company, you are still a person, even though I hear it is changing, and it is actually changing for the worse because of capitalism, you know, growth very quickly. Anyways, that's another video. I'm actually in support of capitalism, not communism. That's another video because communism and socialism is what has made a lot of African countries poor. Another video. But in Kenya, you're still a person doing a job. Out here in Europe, you're like a screwdriver, a part in a bigger machinery, and you can always be replaced. You're a statistic and you feel it. You're like, even if I leave my job tomorrow, they will get somebody. Like, they replace people like parts in a machine. It's very robotic out here when it comes to work. Everybody is just worshipping the tax collector. You are doing it to pay your taxes. While in Africa or like in Kenya, we are doing it so we can live, so we can eat, so we can have a good old time, a little bit more than what we would normally have, and you're still a person at work. In Europe, you're a part of a bigger machinery. You're very much replaceable. It's like there's a big computer, which is the company. There are all these hardware parts, and if you break down, they will just replace it with a new part. People out here at the workplace are nothing but a number, a statistic. That statistic, you're just something tick, 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 like on a computer screen. And I feel it and I notice it. Unless you've worked in both worlds, you can't really get what I'm saying. That's why I'm struggling with words here. But to conclude this video, I think those are some of the 3 differences that I have noticed working in both worlds. Take what you need from this video, leave what you don't need. I just want to provoke your thoughts, right? I told you I'm creating a community of thinkers. On this channel, we think philosophically, we provoke one another's thoughts. I am not shy to say what I'm thinking, and I am happy to hear your thoughts as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed, be sure to do so. My name is Elizabeth Irungu, and ciao!